Namaskar and a very good afternoon to one and all. On behalf of PRL, I, D. Pallam Raju, welcome all of you who have joined on the WebEx platform and on the PRL YouTube channel to this 104th PRL Ka Amrut Vyakhyaan. PRL came into existence along with Indian independence in 1947, and so in the 75th year celebrations of PRL, we started a new program amongst many others called the PRL Kamrut Vyakhyaan. And this in this program, in this event, we wherein we invite people of eminence in the fields of science, engineering, technology, art, literature, business, entrepreneurs, law, and all, and several others to share their excitement with us so that we can enhance our knowledge. This started on 4th August of 2021 and it went on uninterruptedly every week for 75 weeks. And the 75th we had celebrated in the 5th January 2023. So buoyed by this success of this continuous, uninterrupted, excellent series of lectures that we had, we set out on the next goal to continue this iconic series of PRL Kamrut Vyakhyaan once in a month. And in that series, today, the 104th number, which will be delivered by yet another eminent scientist, Dr. Priyadarshini Karve, who is the managing director of Samuchit Envirotech, and she's basically an inventor and invented a number of improved biomass burning cooking devices to reduce smoke in the kitchen and dependence on firewood for domestic cooking in rural areas. She's actively involved with various international organizations working in the field of renewable energy. Dr. Karve will be delivering her Vyakhyaan on a very interesting and contemporary topic, which is the challenges of climate change education. I, on behalf of PRL, thank Dr. Karve for kindly accepting our invitation and agreeing to deliver this Vyakhyaan. To formally introduce the speaker, Dr. Karve, I will invite my colleague, Professor Subhavati Goswami. Professor Goswami, over to you.
Thank you, Professor Raju. It's really a pleasure to welcome Dr. Priyadarshini Karve in the PRL Amrut Vyakhyaan series and introduce her. Dr. Priyadarshini Karve did her PhD in physics from University of Pune in 1998. Her first research project resulted in development of a process for converting agricultural waste into charcoal, and this technology was awarded the Ashden Prize in 2002. She works on rural cooking energy solutions, decentralized organic waste to fuel technologies, and strategies for low carbon sustainable urbanization. She developed the Samuchit carbon footprint calculator for urban Indians. She is the founder director of Samuchit Envirotech and a co-founder of OrjaBox LLP. She is currently the national convener of the Indian Network on Ethics and Climate Change and CEO of Clean Energy Access Network. Her work has been honored by several national and international awards and recognitions. In 2023, she was featured in the Vyakhyaan Vidushi, a book on 75 Indian women science luminaries published by Vyakhyaan Prashar for Azadi Ka Amrut Mahotsav. Dr. Karve spoke in the International Conference on Women in Physics in 2023, which was organized in India. Since then, in the plenary section, and since then, I wanted to have her talk in the Amrut Vyakhyaan series, and I'm very happy that she is finally a speaker in this series. And with that, I over to you, Dr. Karve.
Thank you very much, and it's an honor for me also to be part of this Amrut Vyakhyaan series at PRL. So let me share my presentation and then I'll start. I hope the slide is visible.
Yes.
It's visible.
So, as my introduction mentioned, I have worked in on renewable energy, and then from that, I sort of got involved with various organizations working on climate action. And in the last few years, I have focused on trying to build climate change literacy. Some of the learnings in that process is what I am going to share with the audience today. So, this at least a basic level of understanding of climate change now exists across the board. It has become part of the school curricula, it is part of the public discourses around climate change. We all know that it is use of fossil fuels that leads to buildup of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases in the Earth's atmosphere, and that is trapping heat in the atmosphere, and the average temperature of the planet is going up. So this whole uh, crisis, in a way, was triggered from industrialization. So this has been developing over the last couple of 100 years. Uh, and now we are in a situation where we are sort of trying to look ahead and see where we want to be in 2100 and beyond that. So it's like a centuries span over which we have to think about climate change. Um, it is now becoming very, very urgent that everyone understands the various dimensions of this problem. And the reason is that it is no longer just a phenomenon, but it has become a crisis. Just to put things in perspective, before industrial revolution, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was 250 parts per million, and the average temperature of the planet was 13.7 degrees centigrade. Data from 2023 tells us that now the amount of carbon dioxide has risen to 421 ppm, and the average temperature is also now 1.2 degrees centigrade warmer. And this has triggered a number of changes in the Earth's climate system, which are now beginning to impact people in their day-to-day living. um, Intergovernmental panel on climate change, which from time to time brings out sort of summaries of climate change research to guide policymakers across the world. The latest report that is available had come out in several parts over 2022 to 23. And I think they are currently working on a new report which will come out in an year or so. But two main things which really starkly came out in the last report was, one was that we now, because of this 1.2 degree centigrade increase in the average temperature that has already happened, certain patterns in the weather across the world are now sort of baked in. So we are not going to be able to reverse that, and that has created an existential threat for several vulnerable populations, particularly coastal communities, island communities, because of the rise in the sea level, but also other communities whose day-to-day living depends on their local ecosystems. Because of weather related changes, the ecosystems are also changing, and that is impacting people's livelihoods and creating more risks, more natural disasters. So some of these changes are just here to stay. Which means that there are groups of people across the world who need to be made aware of the increasing risk that is there in their neighborhood, and also to train them or equip them with skills which will allow them to deal with those changes and risks. So that is number one. Secondly, this report also highlighted that um, I mean, climate scientists have figured out that we cannot now escape climate crisis, but we can minimize the impact. And what will minimize the impact is that if we slowed down this warming to an extent that by 2100, the increase in the Earth's average temperature is kept limited to about 1.5 degrees centigrade compared to the pre-industrial temperature. And remember that already out of this 1.2 degree centigrade increase has already happened. So we now, I mean, the equation now is about 75 years and another 0.3 degrees centigrade. So if we can manage in that range, then there will still be damage, but it will be minimal. And this is still doable. But in order to make this happen, our use of fossil fuel across the world must start reducing from 2030. And we are in 2025 now. So we are no longer talking about things that need to happen over decades or centuries, but it is something which needs to happen today and tomorrow and next week. We have to start reducing our dependence on fossil fuels. Even now, year on year, globally, there is an increase in fossil fuel consumption. So we have to sort of start reversing that trend very, very soon. Which means that very aggressive changes are required in the way we use energy. Globally, we need to undergo an energy transition. This involves governments, this involves industries and businesses, this also involves people to make changes in the way they think about their resource consumption, their energy consumption, their aspirations for a good life, and so on. So there is a huge mindset change that needs to happen, and very, very quickly. So a huge education and awareness raising campaign needs to be undertaken globally. So this sort of comes out very strongly from this IPCC report. There has been a lot of brainstorming across the world over what is climate action that we as humanity should undertake now. And there is now a recognition that we have to work on three fronts. We have to really fight on three fronts. One is mitigation. Mitigation means reducing the emission of greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere. Adaptation is sort of accept the changes that are now irreversible and adapt our way of life, adapt our way of doing business, adapt our economic system to these changed realities. And disaster response, because the frequencies and intensities of some natural disasters are increasing because of climate change. And climate action needs to happen from individual level to community level to the way we do businesses, the way financial institutions decide their investments and loans and so on. Governments at different levels, the policies have to factor in the climate change impacts. Global institutions from United Nations to World Bank and so on also have to think about their strategies around this new normal that has come in because of climate change. So action needs to happen at several levels and on several fronts. So keeping all of this in mind, definitely building climate literacy has to be the top priority. This needs to happen globally, but there is a local context to how the climate crisis is unfolding in each location. We also need to inform people across generations and very, very fast over the next 2-3 years, ideally. And this understanding and our response to climate change has to be guided by science and with a long-term vision. A long-term vision, because as I said in the beginning, this is a problem which has evolved over centuries and we are going to have to deal with it over the next couple of centuries. the science-based part is important and doesn't really get talked about much, but typically we see that many people are today talking about conserving environment, protecting environment, and so on, and it is all more emotion driven than science driven. I mean, a very, very popular image is two human hands holding the globe of Earth, which actually is a very arrogant way of looking at this problem, because it sort of gives some special position to humans, that we are the saviors of the planet or something like that. Whereas it is important to understand that the planet is not at a risk at all. What is at risk is us. It is our existence on Earth that is threatened because of climate change, biodiversity loss, all sorts of environmental issues. So whatever we are trying to do here is not for saving Earth or saving tigers, it is for saving us. And that understanding is not really there, even among people who we today look up to as champions of environmental conservation. So having this science and logic based understanding and basing your action on that is somehow lacking. So all of these were sort of issues that I was grappling with over the last 15, 20 years. And um, I sort of started thinking as to how one should structure climate change education. If we want it to be effective, it has to be fast and it has to be widespread. Now, I felt that there are three barriers in this compared to any other educational effort. And the way I'm looking at these barriers is, I call this the time barrier, the space barrier, and the complexity barrier. What do I mean by this? Let me explain that in the next few slides. So, as far as the time barrier is concerned, as humans whose lifespan is less than 100 years, it is difficult for us to think through something which has been evolving over 4 billion years. I mean, that's the age of the Earth. Earth's atmosphere has changed really drastically over these 4 billion years. I mean, when life began on Earth, actually Earth's atmosphere was only carbon dioxide and methane. So that is again the reason why I always make it a point to point out to people that even if the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere became 100%, life will still exist on planet Earth. Humans may not exist, but life in some form or other is going to continue. It is the blue-green bacteria which evolved the process of photosynthesis. It is these bacteria which are responsible for reducing the carbon dioxide percentage to a few hundred ppm and producing enough oxygen to make it 21% in the atmosphere. And the availability of oxygen then allowed, sort of opened up the possibility of multicellular organisms, etc. And also the ozone layer, which protects all of us from ultraviolet radiation. So it is actually a living organism which triggered a climate change, and that is what triggered the evolution to take a certain direction, which has ended up in humans evolving on planet Earth. So if the Earth's atmosphere has undergone so many drastic changes, what is so special about this 200 ppm increase in carbon dioxide percentage and 1 degree centigrade increase in the average temperature of the planet? So this is something that it takes time for people to understand the difference between natural changes which unfold over millions of years versus this human induced change which has unfolded over just a couple of 100 years. And couple of 100 years is a short time duration in this geological time frame. So it takes some time to really understand this intricacy about climate change. Secondly, again, something which has happened 200 years ago, it is now starting to impact me, where I had no part in making this happen. So that is also this cause and impact relationship is also something it takes time to digest. And then I have to think about achieving a goal which is set for 2100. I'm not even going to be around to see the outcome. So where is that motivation for me to do something today for such a long term future? So these are some of the barriers for people to really feel motivated to undertake climate action. As far as space is concerned, climate change impacts are unfolding differently in different locations. If you look at the temperate zone on the planet, most of the developed world is there. So these are the countries which have contributed to creating this crisis, but they are facing relatively less impacts. And because of their technological advancements, because of their economic prosperity, they are the best equipped to adapt to the changes, to build resilience, and so on. On the other hand, if you come to the tropical zone, then the lot of the developing countries are here, including us, and our contribution to creating the crisis is really very small. If you look at the cumulative human induced carbon dioxide in the atmosphere over like from industrial revolution till today, India's contribution is hardly 3%. So we haven't really caused this problem, but we are among the top 10 countries facing the impacts. And we have relatively less adaptive capacity and less capacity to build resilience as developing countries. And then there are these small island countries, coastal communities, etc., which have really zero contribution to the problem, but they are facing, they are actually under threat of being wiped out. And they have the least adaptive capacity and capacity to build resilience. So different conversations need to happen in the different parts of the world around climate change. And this is a barrier that I have come across again and again, because most of the information, most of the educational content that is available today, which is up to date, is online. And most of that is generated in the Western world, in the developed world. So we are not really getting ready-made educational content. I mean, if there are teachers across the country who want some ready-made content to impart climate change education to their students, they are not getting the content which is appropriate for Indian audiences. What are the priorities for India? Hardly any inputs are be found very easily online. So that then becomes a problem for climate change education. So that is the space or geography related challenge. The complexity related challenge, because the climate crisis is now here, it is unfolding, it is happening, which means that we have to fight on mitigation, on adaptation, on resilience building. So there are multiple dimensions, and in order to get the full picture, we cannot just keep talking about the science of climate change. We also have to talk about the politics of climate change. We also have to talk about the economics of climate change. Who is paying the economic cost? Who is benefiting economically by creating climate change? To say, just to give you an example, to say that humans have been adding carbon dioxide into the atmosphere from 1850s is scientifically correct but politically incorrect, because industrial revolution didn't happen everywhere in the world. The bulk of the fossil fuel consumption so far has happened in the developed world. It is the humans in the developed world who have added more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere than the humans in the developing world. So there is that political conversation that also needs to happen. So all of this, so it's then the educational sort of content becomes multidisciplinary and multi-layered, and that adds to the complexity of creating an educational curriculum which is palatable, which is digestible for the various categories of students, so to say, that we are thinking about. So this is the sort of the global scenario, but what is it that we need to then do in the Indian context? In order to understand that, we have to first have some understanding of what is already happening, how we are already responding to this global crisis. So currently, the global political solution for climate change is unfolding under what is called as the Paris Agreement, which was signed in 2015. And under this agreement, every country has made commitments that we will do XYZ things in order to address climate crisis. So India has also made its commitment. These commitments are called NDCs, or nationally determined contributions. So India's commitment currently is compatible with a world that is going to be 2 degrees centigrade warmer by 2100. So climate science has told us that we have to limit the warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade by 2100. But political consensus in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, all the UN system always operates on consensus. So consensus could be built only around, there is an agreement that we will try to limit the warming up to 2 degrees centigrade, and India's commitment is compatible with that. In the long term, we have committed that we will be carbon neutral as a nation by 2070. And the NDC, which is for a short duration, in the near term, these are the 4 things that we have committed: that we will reduce our GHG emissions per unit of GDP by about 45%. We will increase the share of non-fossil fuel power generation to about 50% by 2030. We are well on track. In fact, we may even exceed that at this point. And increase in green cover, so 2.5 to 3 billion ton carbon dioxide equivalent additional carbon sequestration, primarily through forestation, through increasing green cover. And the fourth piece was sort of a late addition to the NDC, but it's an interesting one, which is called LIFE, or mass movement on lifestyle for environment. So I think at some level, I mean, if you look at the first 2 things, these are related to how the government and the business and industry sector works together to achieve the reduction in emissions per GDP, or increase in non-fossil fuel power generation, etc. The green cover part is really mainly the government which will be able to do that on a large scale. But there is a realization that we cannot really achieve climate action without involving individual citizens also, and that is where this last part of mass movement is coming from. The NDCs have to be renewed every 5 years. So this year, in November, December, when there will be a conference of parties for UNFCCC, all the countries are expected to put on the table new NDCs, which will talk about maybe what countries want to do by 2035 or 2040 and so on. So step by step, the idea is to move towards the ultimate goal of 1.5 to 2 degrees centigrade warming by 2100. So this is what India's commitment is. And as you can see, that all of this is focused on mitigation, on reducing emissions. However, as I said, India also faces a lot of climate change impacts. In the Himalayan ice caps are melting, the oceans are warming and expanding. The monsoon rain pattern is getting disturbed, and all of that is having localized impacts in the Himalayan region. We are currently seeing a lot of flash floods happening because there is a liquid, I mean, the glaciers are melting away, so there's a lot of liquid up there, and then when it rains like a cloud burst or something, all that water suddenly comes flowing down, causing flash floods. But eventually the glaciers will be gone in the latter half of this century, which means that northern India is going to face water scarcity, which is very, very concerning, because our food basket is there, and that is dependent on irrigated farming. So water scarcity in northern India is a warning bell for the entire country. We have a long coastline, and as the seawater level is increasing, land submergence will happen. There will be erosion in coastal belts. There will be more droughts. There will be more cloudbursts. There will be more cyclones. All of these are going to hit at us from various directions. There will be adverse impact on fishing. Nearly 40% of India's population is in the coastal belt, and a large proportion of that population is dependent on fishing as livelihood, and also as I mean, it's part of the coastal diet. So that is another food insecurity red flag that is coming up. As the rain pattern gets disrupted, the temperature patterns during winter and summer, the humidity during winter and summer, everything is going for a toss. Last 100 years data is practically not able to guide us anymore because the entire pattern is changing, which means that our agricultural patterns have to be reset. Many of our social economic patterns will also have to be reset. The disease carrying vectors are moving into new areas, and there is a great risk of epidemics and pandemics being triggered. So all of these are risks, specifically for the Indian subcontinent, and more specifically for India. Because the impacts are different in different ecosystems, and we are a large country with about 5 6 different ecosystems. The the policy is that the state government should come up with action plans to deal with the climate impacts that are happening in individual states. So these state action plans are currently being made, and if you go through whatever action plans that are already available, most of them sort of are assuming that citizens will have to be part of climate action, which again means that citizens have to be aware of this whole crisis and therefore what action to take. So, keeping all of this in mind, over the years, I have carried out several actions on my part. So, let me quickly summarize those. I developed a carbon footprint calculator for urban Indians way back in 2008, when actually nobody in India was talking about carbon footprinting. But I felt that urban Indians do need to talk about carbon footprinting, because India's national emissions are low because of the rural populations having low emissions, but the urban populations do have high emissions. So I developed this calculator. It has evolved into a web app now, which is available on this website, climatora.com. Anybody, I mean, you can also go there. It's a freely accessible calculator. You just have to register on the website, fill in some data, which is also something which is easily available. So the idea of this calculator is not really to do a very accurate calculation, but to use data which is easily available to us to get an estimate, a rough estimate, a ballpark estimate of our family's carbon footprint as urban Indians, and therefore our per capita carbon footprint, some sense of where that carbon emission is coming from. So, how I am contributing to this problem is something that comes from this. And I have seen that people have used this calculator, and that number becomes a motivator then for them to take certain actions in their day-to-day life. Increasingly, as climate impacts are hitting everyone, I also am working on with some colleagues on developing a tool for people to assess what is the climate vulnerability in their own neighborhoods. So this is a list of questions that gives us some sense. If we talk with some long-term residents of our own neighborhood, it will give us an idea as to what are the climate risks that are increasing in our neighborhoods. And there are some groups, some think tanks who have come up with district level vulnerability mapping is now available in India. So using some of that data, which is sort of looking at weather patterns and things like that. And then this data through these questions, which comes from people's lived experiences. So this bottom up and top down, both of these things come together to create a sense of what climate vulnerabilities exist in a neighborhood. I have been conducting this Samuchit climate friendly lifestyle workshop since 2008. It is aimed at urban Indians who are either already part of the workforce and therefore decision makers and policy makers in their own spheres, or young students, college going students who are going to be part of the workforce very soon. So that's the target audience. What gets discussed in this, it starts with an understanding of climate science and politics, specifically the India specific climate challenges. And then people do this exercise of calculating their own carbon footprint, understanding their own climate vulnerability, and what actions they can take at their personal level, family level, neighborhood level to deal with this. But then in the last part of the workshop, we focus on what needs to happen as a society, because many times these climate change conversations are focused a bit too much on personal action. And then there is this whole guilt tripping that it is you who are causing this problem and therefore you need to do this. But there are systemic issues which also need to be acknowledged. So for example, I am in Pune city, where I think we have the some national level record of number of vehicles per person or something like that. So the traffic jams are becoming part of our daily life, and everybody is advising people that for air pollution, for climate change, and all of this, let us use public transport. But public transport system is quite bad in the city, and that is the reason why there are so many private vehicles. So in order for me to take that action, I have to first figure out how the public transport should improve, because otherwise I'm not going to reach places on time. So it is the system that is making me emit more emissions, and that understanding has to be there. And therefore, as citizens, we have to demand from our local administration to improve public transport so that we can reduce our contribution to climate change. So these conversations also need to happen. We have over the years built a WhatsApp group which is called Citizens of Sustainable City, and many people who do this workshop want to continue this brainstorming, want to continue to take climate action collectively, inspire each other. So they join this WhatsApp group, and this is a very vibrant online community. And many positive actions have happened through this community coming together. So this is one very successful activity. Another thought process that I sort of floated in 2016 after the Paris Agreement was signed, and these conversations around carbon neutrality started happening, but countries had not yet committed anything. But at that time, I thought that educational institutes should take the lead, and it is a great educational opportunity also. So we sort of developed a methodology where suppose a college or a campus, an educational campus approaches us. The first thing we ask them to do is to put together a core team which should consist of students, teachers, and also representatives of admin staff, management, and so on. We handhold this group and show them how to calculate carbon emissions from various sources on the campus, and also calculate how much carbon sequestration is happening on the campus, because many large educational campuses also have a lot of greenery, so they do have some carbon sequestration also happening. So we train people how to do these calculations, and then based on that, they start themselves seeing what are the areas where changes in the work processes or changes in the technologies, what needs to be done in order to reduce carbon emissions in different places and increase the carbon sequestration. So they themselves then come up with an action plan to move their campus towards carbon neutrality and start implementing this. So several things happen because of this. One is that this thought process, that any action or any new development that you are planning, we typically think about what is going to be its economic impact. We should also start thinking about what is going to be its carbon emission impact. So that carbon accounting thought process sort of gets embedded in decision making. A climate aligned work culture evolves on the campus, and the campus will eventually go carbon neutral. For me, that is really the least important outcome. What is more important is that the students will take all this learning with them into the workplaces and homes that they go into. So this climate aligned thinking then spreads more widely through this entire process. So that was this whole idea. We have worked with several college and university campuses in this, mainly in the Pune Mumbai belt, and a few other outside in Maharashtra specifically, on these lines. A few years back, I also started realizing that uh, carbon accounting is going to become an essential professional skill. But there are no degree courses or anything around this. So I developed an online course on basics of carbon accounting, and that is also offered through the climateora.com. It's a climate education platform. So this was another activity that I have been part of. This course is now being offered as a part of the curriculum of several colleges and universities in Maharashtra, and very soon we will also be doing this in other states. So based on all of this, I feel that we need a climate literacy framework, and it needs to be implemented in India very, very quickly and very wide, in a widespread manner. The framework can be for like for the entire country, but the implementation has to happen locally, and the content has to be based on what is happening in that ecosystem locally. So the content has to be developed in a localized manner and in local language. Uh, that's also an important aspect of this. The the way the educational input is given, it has to focus on making climate action as a participatory process. It should not guilt trip individuals or put too much burden on individual action. But there has to be this realistic realization that policies, economics, the way businesses are carried out, the way family level, community level decisions happen, all of this has to work together. And accordingly, things need to happen at the government level, formal education level, informal education level, and so on. The content should focus on science, of course, but also the ethics. And there are many ethical dilemmas around climate change. As I already mentioned, those who are contributing to the problem are suffering less, whereas those who are suffering the most have not contributed to the problem. So, who should pay compensation to whom? Who should bear the cost of climate readiness for different communities? But there is also another aspect to this. As we transition from fossil fuel based energy system to, let's say, a renewable energy based energy system, many fossil fuel based livelihoods are going to be ending. So, for example, if we start shutting down coal mines, what happens to coal miners? So they have to be reskilled and given some other way of life. So that is something called just transition. This energy transition also has to be in accordance with social justice. So these are all ethical issues which also need to be highlighted. And the conversations around climate change often uh, end up being a lot of gloom and doom and so on. So we have to make a conscious effort that the conversation remains solution centric and action oriented. So these are some of the basic features that have to be kept in mind. And we need different inputs for different population groups. At school level, while we do need to talk about the science and justice issues and impacts and so on, but the focus needs to be on resilience building and disaster preparedness. Because I mean, think about it, that a kid who is in, let's say, fifth standard, sixth standard today, by the time this child grows up and comes into their 20s and has to actually deal with the realities of the world, by that time either climate change will be solved or it will be beyond solving. So let us prepare the kids for the worst case scenario. So the focus has to be more on disaster preparedness and resilience building there. But at higher education, where these are young people who are going to be able to really do something to solve the problem in the next 5 to 10 years, their mitigation strategies, adaptation strategies also have to be highlighted. They have to develop a global outlook around climate change, and also a focus on what action is needed locally. General public also, which is like people who are currently in the workforce, who are taking decisions today and tomorrow, they also need to be educated. We cannot keep this limited to formal education. The general public, people who are working at middle management in various companies, who are secretaries in the government, who are politicians, who are homemakers, all of them also need to understand the global perspective of climate change and what is it that they can do in their workspaces, in their homes, in their communities, what policies they can make locally and what actions they can take. And special attention is needed for governments and businesses, because policies are the key for solving this crisis, and businesses are contributing to the crisis. So we have to sort of flip that whole conversation and sort of mainstream green economic activities, so that the businesses contribute to solution rather than to problem. So they have also to be I mean, the key decision makers there also have to be given the right kind of educational inputs. So these are some of the areas that I feel that we really need at a national level. I mean, after independence, there was this huge literacy campaign, to address the problem of people not being able to read and write. On that kind of a massive scale, we really need this climate literacy campaign now, and this is what I feel it should be designed. These 20 years are really very, very crucial. These 2 decades for climate action. I mean, 100 years down the line, people will study what happened in these 20 years, and they will either praise us or blame us. We are actually writing the history of the future. So these are very, very crucial years that we are living through, and how do we make these decades of climate action is really going to be the key for the future of human civilizations over the next couple of centuries. So from that perspective, climate change education is very, very important. And in order to crack this, we have to first understand and acknowledge the barriers and challenges and figure out creative solutions for those. So thank you very much. And I would be happy to hear your reactions and
yeah. So thank you, Dr. Karve, for very nice presentation wherein you covered the climate change related issues. And in addition to this, you talked about the action plans, mitigation, and also highlighted the importance of climate education or climate literacy you talked about. So it's now time for our audiences to interact with you. So let me invite colleagues who have joined in this platform, WebEx. So please raise your hands so that I can invite you to interact with Dr. Karve. So let me see if I can any hands. Take some time. So, meanwhile, before we get questions from colleagues, I would just like to know, you mentioned about the severity of impact in, let's say, tropical zone and temperate zone. So, can you elaborate on that? Because when we talk about climate change, it is global climate change we talk about.
Yeah.
So, I would love to know your opinion on the differences which you mentioned.
So the differences are on two levels. I mean, one is that the weather related changes are more severe in the tropical region than in the temperate region. That's one. Although that difference is now reducing. I mean, even in Europe and US, we see climate change creating a lot of havoc. But the readiness to deal with these challenges is much better in the developed countries than in the developing countries. The warning mechanisms, the, the evacuation mechanisms, the overall ability to absorb economic shocks. There is a huge difference between these, and that is what creates the difference between impacts felt at the ground level.
And so you have been into this business kind of climate education or literacy. So do you see any, kind of positive output coming out of this, which is really, helping us to get our goals?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I and some of my colleagues, we have been talking about climate change issues in Pune city specifically since about 2007, 2008. And we have interacted with various other civil society organizations. So there are NGOs which are working on air pollution issues. There are NGOs which are working on trying to protect the rivers in this region or the natural ecosystems in this region. So we have been having these conversations which have made people also to realize how their work is linked with um, or gets impacted by climate change and is also contributing to climate solution. So the climate conversations are also happening in these issues. Some of us got together and this was an effort led by an organization called Pune International Center, but I was an active part of that. We all work together to create a roadmap for Pune metropolitan region to become carbon neutral by 2030. And we showed that at least on paper it is definitely possible. And that is what triggered in at least Maharashtra state this whole idea of cities making their own plans for carbon neutrality. So that was one effort of which I was part of. Also, from the perspective of formal education, I now see, I mean, many universities are now creating centers of sustainability and climate change. They have started offering courses, elective courses, short-term courses around climate change and skills related to dealing with climate change. So these are things which have really evolved over the last 10, 12 years. When I started talking about this, there was hardly any conversation in India about climate change. NGOs were not even thinking about climate change, but some of us have been now involved in hand-holding even grassroots level organizations to understand how their work has to respond to climate risks and things like that. So a lot of positive change has definitely happened especially in the last decade also.
Okay, so I'm waiting for some hands. So again, I will continue to interact with you. So
can I ask? Hello, okay. This is
yeah,
Acharya.
Acharya ji, yes, please welcome.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, please go ahead, Acharya ji.
You said the basically one point is on mass movement and lifestyle of for environment. Basically it's necessary, but is it possible to change ourselves basically? So basically you also said whether we can make use of the general transport, but is it if you really see ourselves, if you see our neighbor or friend, if he has one vehicle or one car or two car, I should have better car or more than 2 to 3 cars. So then the things are now increasing the day by day. Basically, so if I remember myself when I joined PRL 50 years back, so I used to well, there were hardly any car or the even a scooter inside the
Yeah,
campus. But now I see everybody has 1 or 2 car, even in employee.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
then how to change ourselves? Basically, I really it's basically a ecosystem that has to go out of our mind. But then how do we do that? So I really I don't understand.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I know. So that is where it has to be a sort of a policy, and the business world and everything. Everything has to work in tandem. But I'll tell you a few examples. Like when the whole idea of creating a WhatsApp group came up because when I started having these conversations with people, when they do their own carbon footprint calculation, their own climate vulnerability assessment, that sort of opens the eyes. And many people I started meeting who said that we have been thinking about this, but as you rightly pointed out, we see around us nobody is really bothered about climate change.
yeah,
Everybody is on their own trip. So then you start feeling that, okay, maybe I am just one crazy person here. But there are many such crazy persons across the entire city. So in that WhatsApp group, all these crazy persons come together, and then they develop a confidence that, okay, there are this few hundred people who also think like me, and then what can we do collectively? So some changes are then driven accordingly. So there is a very active green business ecosystem that has started evolving in Pune city now. And they and I mean, all these people, uh, the NGO sector has really been very suspicious always about technology, and that has been a big challenge for them to bring about change. Advertisements are very, very powerful. I mean, we have changed because of a lot of advertisements. So these young entrepreneurs are now using this whole process of advertisement very, very smartly. So people who are glamorous people are seen wearing carrying bags made out of waste plastic. I mean, those Instagram photos start appearing, and suddenly it becomes trendy to use recycled products rather than products made from virgin materials. So these kind of trends, I mean, we are in a crisis situation now. So changing people's hearts and minds will happen at its own pace. But whatever may be the reason, if it is pushing people towards a good behavior, that should be a positive and welcome sign. So there are these kind of triggers, and a lot of people are using these very smartly now. So change is happening, and policies. So for example, take this whole Surya Ghar policy, for example. That generated a lot of interest in rooftop solar systems. Banks came up with their own schemes for giving loans if you want to put up a rooftop solar system, and so on and so forth. So now suddenly you see everywhere rooftop solar PV systems appearing, and it is becoming more mainstream. uh, just think about the solar water heaters. Solar water heaters is a renewable energy technology, but it has become so mainstream that we don't even think about it as a renewable energy technology. So there are these examples which need to be highlighted, and if policies, businesses, and peer pressure comes together, positive change can happen. uh, I mean, there are these seeds that I see coming up in the communities around me. I hope that they amplify, but
but,
change will definitely happen.
but it's a very slow, very slow process, I think.
Yes, that is the big concern, and that is why a big push is required, and that is why a nationwide campaign
And,
is required.
okay, thank you very
Lokesh, if I can ask
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
something.
yeah. Please go ahead, Mr.
So,
Bro.
like in the same token as is being discussed, one thing we see in Ahmedabad very much is construction.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who stays in these houses. And then, always wherever in our society, something will come that the groundwater is not coming. So, have to dig deep.
Yeah.
So this kind of, urbanization, this construction, something needs to be done for that also. I don't know if something is being done or not. At least in Ahmedabad, we just see so much construction all
Yeah.
around.
No, that's the thing that, in fact, that is the phenomenon across the Indian cities. In fact, I was reading an article which said that all the urban infrastructure that will exist in India post 2050, more than half of that is yet to be constructed. So there is even more massive construction that will happen. But what you are saying is right, and this is contributing to this whole urban heat island effect. There is this huge resource that is locked up in empty houses, and all this I really blame on policies. I mean, today people are buying 3, 4 houses as, I mean, they think of this as an investment. Uh, and they are taking loans for buying these houses. So why should one person get a low interest loan for buying 4 houses? There has to be some restriction on the amount of money you can borrow for buying houses. The construction industry, this whole idea that, I mean, even in Pune city, and I think maybe in Ahmedabad also, once the metro was constructed, around the metro there is more FSI, which means more construction is happening. These are really totally wrong kind of policies, and that is why educating the policy makers and policy designers is also then becomes critical. That and we have to really think outside the box. I mean, it is all a matter of what is the activity that is going to earn more money, that is going to generate more economic activity. Can we build policies which will create more economic activity by protecting ecosystems and by using less resources? I mean, that's one conversation, because here in Pune city, some of us are also trying to fight against the riverfront development that is happening, where riparian forest is being replaced by a concrete riverfront. So, what is the motivation of that? You concretize the riverfront, you have multi-million dollars to be made by land transactions. But can we then change that conversation and say that if there is a if there is a riparian forest here, these are the ecosystem services that the city is getting, and this is the value of those ecosystem services, which is much more than maybe selling land for some resorts or whatever. So those economic arguments will also help. So economists also really need to engage with these conversations, and that is why I said that it is no longer just about science. We have to think about the politics and economics.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So anybody else would like to interact? Okay, so I have another question related to, uh, when you talk about the mitigation plan and results, another factor is when you talk about climate change, which is a long-term phenomena process, we have increasing population globally also. And
Yeah,
there is a genuine demand for the energy in that sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So how this population growth is offsetting our the results of the mitigation plan which is already in place?
So there are 2, 3 different ways of looking at population trends. One is there is actually good news that population is stabilizing now. We will see in the latter half of this century across the world, the global population will stabilize at around 10 billion people. Even in India, the population will stabilize at around 1.6 billion people. If you look at the current increase in population, that seems to be an increase. It is the birth rates have actually been dropping since 1960s across the world and in India also, and across all population groups. So birth rates have consistently come down, but lifespans have increased. And that is the reason why the population numbers are increasing. So the population numbers are not increasing because more people are coming into the population. They are increasing now more because the people are living longer. In that sense, the population is not really contributing to increasing resource consumption. The increase in resource consumption is happening because of more and more people coming into the higher income brackets. So it is the richer people who consume more resources. So that income disparity is driving the consumption patterns, is driving climate change today more than the population pattern. And again, that is also another justice issue, that we tend to sort of blame the poorer populations, but their carbon footprint is actually the lowest. It is the resource consumption is happening at the higher income end. And that is the reason why the carbon footprint calculator or the workshop for climate friendly lifestyle, all of this I started targeting specifically to urban upper middle class groups from that perspective, because it is the consumption that we need to work on now rather than population. Population is a solved problem.
Okay, so we are kind of, this end of the question answer session. So just, when you talk about the action plans, as far as layman or education level is concerned, the action plans are more or less similar for air pollution as well as for the climate change.
Yeah.
And the air pollution actions or air pollution problem is much more highlighted than the climate related actions. So, but ultimately, we are reaching the kind of same target either through,
so that is also another positive thing, that you take one action and it's going to solve multiple problems.
Yeah.
So that's a win-win situation then. And air pollution is something which people find it easier to relate with.
Yeah, that's
because it's very, very immediate.
Yeah. So thank you, Professor Karve. It was very nice to interact to you, and also we are thankful that you accepted our invitation to deliver this Vyakhyaan. Now I invite my colleague Dr. Vineet Goswami to conclude the session.
Yeah.
Hello. Thank you very much for inviting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you very much. So that brings us to the conclusion of the 104th episode of PRL Kamrit Vyakhyaan. I would first like to express my gratitude and heartily thanks to Dr. Priyadarshini Karve for accepting our invitation and giving an excellent talk on the topic, the challenges of climate change education. I would also like to thank Dr. Karve for answering the audience's questions. Next, I would like to thank our audiences for today's talk. Next upon, I would like to express my thanks to PRL Director, Professor Anil Bhardwaj, Dean PRL, Professor D. Pallamraju, and Chair of the PRL Kamrit Vyakhyaan Committee, Professor Nandita Srivastava, for all their support in organizing this episode as well as all the other episodes of the PRL Kamrit Vyakhyaan successfully. I also thank my colleagues in the Vyakhyaan Organizing Committee for successfully conducting this episode of PRL Kamrit Vyakhyaan series. Kindly visit our website and other media platforms to know more about the upcoming events being held at PRL, particularly PRL Kamrit Vyakhyaan. With these words, I propose the closure of today's episode of PRL Kamrit Vyakhyaan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.